the frozen silence of the North Pacific Ocean, nearly 1,500 miles northwest of Hawaii. A terrifying secret lay buried in the crushing darkness of the abyss. It was March 1968, and the Soviet ballistic missile submarine K-129 had vanished from the face of the Earth, taking with it 98 sailors, 3 nuclear missiles, and the most guarded cryptographic codebooks of the Kremlin. For weeks, the Soviet Navy frantically scoured the surface, their ships desperate to find their lost vessel. But the ocean is vast, and the submarine had slipped into the shadows without a trace. After months of searching, the Soviets assumed the sub was lost forever in the deepest trenches of the ocean, and they declared it a grave for their sailors, abandoning the hunt. But while the Russians gave up, the United States Navy was listening, utilizing a top-secret network of underwater hydrophones, known as SOSUS, intended to track Soviet movements. They had detected a catastrophic acoustic anomaly, an underwater implosion that pinpointed the exact location where the steel hull of the K-129 had crumpled under the immense pressure. The Americans knew something the Soviets did not. They knew exactly where the wreckage was resting, 3 miles down on the ocean floor, waiting to be claimed by anyone bold enough to reach it. This presented an opportunity that was unprecedented in the history of espionage, a chance to steal a Soviet nuclear weapon and their encryption keys without them ever knowing. But the engineering challenge was deemed impossible by every expert, as lifting a 2,000-ton steel object from a depth of 16,000 feet had never been attempted in human history. The pressure at that depth is strong enough to crush a human body instantly, and the sheer weight of the cable needed to lift the sub would be enough to snap any ship in half. Enter the Central Intelligence Agency, specifically a small group of engineers who believed that the impossible was simply a problem that had been solved, yet, with enough money. They codenamed the operation Project Azorian, and they knew that to pull this off, they would need a cover story so elaborate that the entire world would be fooled. They couldn't just send a Navy salvage ship, as the Soviet spy satellites would spot it immediately and realize that the Americans were trying to steal their nuclear technology. So, the CIA decided to build a fake ship, a massive vessel that would hide its true purpose in plain sight, pretending to be a commercial mining operation looking for manganese nodules. To sell this lie, they needed a frontman, someone eccentric, wealthy, and reclusive enough that nobody would question his sudden interest in deep-sea mining. They chose Howard Hughes, the billionaire aviator and industrialist, who agreed to lend his name to the project, giving the CIA the perfect alibi for constructing the most advanced ship in the world. The ship was named the Hughes Glomar Explorer, a 600-foot behemoth that was packed with technology that was decades ahead of its time, designed solely for this one heist. Inside the ship was a massive internal moon pool, a hollow center where a giant mechanical claw, nicknamed Clementine, would be lowered miles down to grab the submarine. The construction took years, shrouded in absolute secrecy, with workers believing they were building a mining vessel, unaware that they were actually building a weapon of espionage. By 1974, the Glomar Explorer was ready to set sail, heading out into the vast emptiness of the Pacific Ocean to a spot known only to a handful of men in Washington. As the ship arrived at the target coordinates, the tension on the bridge was palpable, as the crew knew that one mistake could lead to a nuclear accident or a war. The Soviet Navy, suspicious of the massive American ship, sent a tugboat and later a missile cruiser to investigate, circling the Glomar Explorer like sharks, smelling blood in the water. The CIA operatives on board had to maintain their cover, casually mining for rocks on the surface, while thousands of feet below, a giant steel claw was inching toward a nuclear submarine. It was a high-stakes game of poker played on the high seas, with the Americans waving friendly greetings to the Russians while simultaneously robbing them blind right under their feet. The engineering required to keep the ship stable was revolutionary, using a dynamic positioning system to keep the vessel perfectly still over the target despite the rough ocean waves. Down in the darkness, the mechanical claw finally reached the wreckage of the K-129, its massive steel pincers opening slowly to grasp the broken hull of the Soviet submarine. The operators in the control room watched on grainy black and white monitors, holding their breath as the jaws of Clementine closed around the rusting steel of the enemy vessel. The lift began, a slow and agonizing process, inch by inch, fighting the immense drag of the water and the terrifying weight of the waterlogged submarine hanging by a thread. For hours, the massive winches groaned under the strain, pulling the prize up from the graveyard of the deep, bringing secrets that had been buried for 6 years back to the light. But as the submarine was lifted halfway to the surface, disaster struck. The immense structural stress proved too much for the damaged hull of the K-1292 to withstand. A massive crack formed in the submarine, and nearly 2/3 of the vessel broke away, plummeting back down into the abyss, taking the nuclear missiles and codebooks with it. The crew watched in horror as their prize disintegrated, leaving them with only the forward section of the submarine still clamped in the jaws of the mechanical claw. Despite the catastrophic failure, they continued the lift, determined to salvage whatever they could from the section that remained, hoping it contained something of value. The Glomar explorer swallowed the remains of the K-129 into its moon pool, closing the massive doors underneath to hide the wreckage from passing satellites and ships. Inside the secret bay, CIA teams in hazmat suits entered the radioactive ruin of the Soviet sub, sifting through the mud and twisted metal for any scrap of intelligence. They found torpedoes, technical manuals, and sonar equipment, providing invaluable insight into Soviet naval capabilities, even if the primary prize of the missiles was lost. But they also found something else: the bodies of 6 Soviet sailors who had died when the submarine imploded, preserved in the cold tomb of the ocean floor for years. In a moment of profound humanity amidst the Cold War espionage, the CIA decided to give these enemy sailors a proper military burial at sea with full honors. They filmed the ceremony, draped the sailors in the Soviet naval flag, and played the Soviet national anthem as they committed the bodies back to the deep ocean. This footage would remain classified for decades, a secret testament to the respect that warriors hold for one another, even when they are enemies fighting on opposite sides. The operation was only a partial success, but technically, Project Azorian remains one of the greatest engineering feats ever accomplished by the intelligence community. The story eventually leaked to the press, causing a sensation and forcing the CIA to issue their famous non-denial denial. We can neither confirm nor deny the existence of such an operation. The Soviets were furious, humiliated that the Americans had managed to steal their submarine right from under their noses without them realizing until it was too late. The Glomar Explorer, the ship built for a lie, became a legend, a physical proof of just how far the United States was willing to go to maintain its dominance. To this day, the full inventory of what was recovered from the K-129 remains redacted, hidden in the secure archives of the CIA, leaving historians to wonder what really happened. Some conspiracy theories suggest that the CIA actually recovered the entire submarine and that the story of it breaking apart was just another layer of the cover-up. Regardless of the truth, Project Azorian demonstrated the terrifying reach of American intelligence. There is nowhere on Earth, not even the bottom of the ocean, that is safe from their eyes. It changed the way the world thought about ocean security, proving that depth is no longer a barrier, and that the seafloor is just another battlefield in the global game. The engineering technology developed for the Glomar Explorer kickstarted the deep-sea mining industry, pushing human innovation forward even though its original purpose was theft. Imagine the sheer audacity required to pitch this idea to the president. We want to build a giant claw, hide it in a fake ship, and steal a nuclear sub. It sounds like the plot of a James Bond movie, but it was executed with the precision of a military operation and the budget of a small country. The psychological impact on the Kremlin was devastating. They realized that their codes, their technology, and their dead were in the hands of their greatest adversary. This operation serves as a reminder that the most significant battles of the Cold War were not fought with guns, but with engineering, deception, and nerves of steel. Today, the K-129 still rests in pieces on the ocean floor, a silent monument to the sailors who died and the spies who tried to disturb their rest. But the legacy of Project Azorian lives on in the shadow world of underwater espionage, where cables are tapped and sensors are placed in the eternal darkness. Modern submarines now operate with the knowledge that if they sink, they are not lost. They are simply waiting to be found by someone with a bigger claw. The ocean is no longer a place of silence. It is a domain of constant surveillance, where every sound is analyzed and every anomaly is investigated by rival powers. The Glomar Explorer has since been scrapped, its steel recycled, but the audacity of its mission remains a gold standard for covert operations. It teaches us that in the world of intelligence, the only limit is imagination, and if you have enough resources, you can literally move mountains or submarines. We live in a world where the surface is watched by satellites and the depths are patrolled by drones, leaving no place for secrets to hide anymore. The story of the K-129 is a tragedy for the families of the sailors, but for the CIA, it was a triumph of will, a proof of concept that nothing is out of reach. As we look back at this operation, we must ask ourselves, what other audacious missions have been conducted that we still know nothing about? What other secrets are currently being pulled from the depths, hidden behind cover stories and billionaires, while the world looks the other way? The reality of kinetic warfare is that it often happens without an explosion, in the slow, grinding tension of a cable lifting a heavy weight from the dark. Project Azorian was not just a heist, it was a statement of power, a message sent to the Soviet Union that said, "We can touch you anywhere." And that message is still relevant today. As nations compete for dominance over the undersea cables and resources that power our modern world. The next time you look at the ocean, remember that beneath the waves, a silent war is being fought, and the stakes are higher than ever before. We will continue to dive deep into these declassified files, bringing you the stories of the operations that defined a generation and shaped history. This is not just a story about a submarine. It is a story about the lengths to which empires will go to secure their survival in a dangerous world. Stay tuned to Kinetic Radius, because the archives are deep, and we are just scratching the surface of what has been declassified. Subscribe now, activate the bell, and join us as we uncover the next chapter of the Shadow War that never truly ended.